I don't think that we're talking enough about the mental health crisis of a dancer that goes from school into a company. And this, I do believe it's one of the hardest things that we face in this career. Like, we invest so much money into these phenomenal, incredible talents. Like, you watch some of these girls and boys and you're just like, wow, what a talent. But we're not stewarding their mind. And we see it. They quit when it gets too hard, or, it's very challenging for them to adapt into a company, gleaning information, being able to bring your own artistry. That comes from having substance, that comes from having exposure to these different forms of dance that only enrich your experience. But then, you wonder, it's like, how many hours has that dancer been, training to do so well in those competitions? Like, will they be fulfilled in a ballet company? Like, I don't know. And I wonder if there isn't something that we're missing inside of the training at this time that would promote a readiness for that.
Joy, welcome to the Ballet Science Podcast. I am thrilled to have you here today, and I'm just so excited to talk to you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's really a big honor to be on your podcast. I love the work that you do, and I look forward to our conversation.
Awesome. Well, let's jump right in. So to start off, can you tell us a little bit about your journey in ballet, from when you first began dancing to training internationally and to where your career has taken you today?
Okay, so I was born in Santa Monica, California, in the United States. I started dancing when I was 3 years old because my mother had many, many kids. I'm one of 9 children, and I had a lot of energy. So she was looking for something to put us in. She put us in community dance, and we were lucky that a studio near us was actually one of the best places to train if you wanted to go to New York City Ballet, if you wanted to go the School of American Ballet route. So I started in a ballet school called West Side School of Dance. That was a Balanchine school, a preparatory school. And my parents decided to move to Austin when I was 12 years old. And unfortunately, that meant I had to move with them. And I was very, very sad because I was really enjoying my training at that point and really thought I knew at a young age that I wanted to be a professional dancer. And I had seen New York City Ballet, seen ABT because my grandmother lived in New York, and I really had set my eyes on New York City Ballet. I was an avid reader, so I read the biographies of Balanchine, all of his dancers at quite a young age. And when my parents moved to Austin, that was a pivotal moment for me because I realized from a young age that the training levels weren't the same. And can you imagine having a conversation with your parents where you're trying to tell them that the dance teachers aren't great? 12-year-olds, it's like, how can you really believe that? So that led me to leaving regular school and becoming homeschooled. And I trained with a private teacher who was training the Vaganova method. And she changed my training from Balanchine to Vaganova. And then I did a private audition for the Kiev Academy of Ballet, which is unfortunately now defunct, and received a scholarship to go to their summer as well as enter into their school. So then I think I was 13 years old going into 9th grade. So I had skipped 7th and 8th grade and went right into high school and started training there in the Vaganova style. Spent 2 years there, and the end of my last year there, my parents did not have money, even though I was on a scholarship. We couldn't stay there. The school fees were too high, and the girls in my class were, the school fees just covered school. They didn't cover privates outside or competitions. And this is the birth of the YGP era, where if you weren't in YGP, you weren't getting selected for schools or for companies. And I was very aware of that because of my financial situation, I was going to lose out on any competitive advantage. And my ballet teacher kind of took pity on me. She's like, I would love to work with you outside, but you can't pay for the privates. So have you ever thought about training in Russia? And I said, well, and at this point, I'd watched everything that there was about the Bolshoi, about the Mariinsky, and I was obsessed with Russia and obsessed with the grand classical ballets. And she introduced me to a friend who was visiting the US. And at that time, the Bolshoi was doing some master classes when they came with the company. So then I was invited to do one of those master classes, which was very special, and got invited to audition for the school at that master class. And at that time, they were just launching an international course. And I auditioned for the school, got accepted, and then got a scholarship to go to their summer intensive in New York. And this is back when the Bolshoi was actually bringing their own teachers from the school and then the director from the school to come and watch. And they were bringing the boys from the school to come and watch. And I got selected after a performance of Pekida that summer to then join the Russian course. So they were looking for people to come to their international program. And I was very lucky to get into their Russian program, which was a little bit of a different way of training, and moved to Russia consequently after that, and entered into the full-time Russian program, like Russian academics, and went full-time. And the way the Bolshoi school works is there is one first to fifth class, and then they have a big cohort, and then they have first, second, and third course, which those are preparing you for your professional years. And I entered in the first course, and these years, a lot of the dancers in those classes are dancing with the Bolshoi already in productions that they have, or school productions on the Bolshoi stage. So from my first months in the school, we were already doing things with the Bolshoi company, which was such night and day from the United States and from my own circumstances in the United States. Because up until that point, I had never danced a solo. I had, I was really, I don't know, I was kind of one of those kids who had gone through the American system. And then all of a sudden I was here in this very elite Russian ballet boarding school, and went through 3 years of training at the Bolshoi school, graduated at the top of my class, and then subsequently invited to dance with the Bolshoi. Danced with the Bolshoi for a few years, and then moved to the Kremlin Ballet, where I became a principal dancer at 19 years old, and then stayed with that company, did a lot of international competitions, and then was scouted while I was in Korea after doing a competition there and winning gold, offered a contract to dance with the Universal Ballet. And I wanted a new adventure at this point, and worked with them for around 2 years, and then decided to go back to Russia. And after being in Russia for another year and a half, I, on a whim, accepted a contract with Boston Ballet. And that was the year that COVID happened. So when COVID happened, I told Miko, I was like, look, I think I'm better suited to Russia anyway. Thank you so much. I don't want to do Zoom ballet. And went back to Russia. Ended up getting offered a job as an assistant director of a company in the south of Russia, as well as a principal dancer. And so worked there for 2 years. And then the war happened in Ukraine. And we had to leave with my then, at the time, new husband. And that is when I got invited to be a principal dancer with the Toulouse Ballet in the south of France. And that was a short-term contract. And then I got the contract with Paris Opera for another short-term contract. And then got offered a job on a show called The 12, and basically moved my life to France. When the show didn't get renewed, we had this big conversation with my husband. Okay, what are we doing? I didn't know whether I should try to go back to a ballet company or not, and really fell in love with my life here in France. For the past 4 years, I've been doing a lot of philanthropic work. I started my own nonprofit, and I've been teaching, being on juries of competitions, and then guest dancing around the world. And I kind of decided last year to take a leap and kind of go full-time freelance. And so now I'm a freelance dancer, and then also a director of a very new ballet company here in Paris, and running a nonprofit which helps provide scholarships for underprivileged dancers around the world. So that's my life in a very short.
I mean, incredible, just incredible story. And thank you so much for sharing all of that. I mean, just even one little part of any of that is just incredible. So, like, what a career and a life you've had already. Just amazing. What age were you when you moved to Russia? I'm not sure if you mentioned that.
I moved when I was newly 15, like just
15.
turned 15. Very,
That's
very young.
crazy.
I now I understand that. When I was that age, I didn't have any reference point for it. People would say, "Oh, you're so young," but at that point in my life, it seemed like that was the only, option for me to continue down this path. So, now I look at the 15-year-olds I teach, and I'm just like, "Oh my gosh, that is so young."
That is quite young, but
Mhm.
just how incredible. So I want to talk a little bit more about your training at the Bolshoi Ballet School,
Mhm.
if you don't mind.
Sure.
I think it's just so fascinating. So, what did a typical training day look like for you at the Bolshoi Ballet
Mm.
School in terms of like intensity, workload,
Mhm.
expectations, and how did you like adapt to that environment?
Yeah. Well, each year had its separate challenges. You're working in the 3 years I spent there. You're working toward the state diploma, which gives you the right to be a ballet dancer, and then if you want to go on and teach, you go and do further study. So your main focus is preparing for these state exams that come in your second year and your third year, and there's a lot of material inside of a syllabus that you're having to learn inside of your classes, and then again, as I mentioned before, there was a lot of extracurricular preparation for performance and for competition on top of that. And then you have your full day of academics mixed in. So I can share kind of an example from my second year that I'm in the company that I was sorry, when I was in the school, I decided to live off campus, which was much better for my mental health. Uh, Most of the girls also are in high competition with each other. So you, it's not necessarily sanctioned, but everyone is doing it, is training with a private coach outside. So I would wake up at 6 a.m., do some conditioning, and then go to my coach on the outskirts of Moscow, work with her for an hour and a half, then get back on the train and go to ballet. I would have a lesson like music literature or history of art, and then we would go into ballet class, which was in the middle of the day, and that was 2 hours. And then we would have either character or point or variations or historical dance or contemporary pas de deux. So that would every other day you'd have some different things. So you would have two of those classes after your ballet class, and then we would have what was called practica, and then rehearsals on top of that. And in between those different classes, you would have like, I don't know, math, science, literature. I had a Russian for foreign speakers, which that was really helpful, especially the first year, because I mean, trying to dive right into Russian academics was challenging, and the system is the academic system is quite different from the American system. And I remember that being a really big adjustment of you're you're supposed to go to those classes to listen, and then your exams are you orally explaining what you've learned or what you've absorbed. And it's kind of a, it's kind of a lottery. Like they'll say the test is on these 140 themes, but you're going to pick one or two of those themes out of like their little tickets like that. And you'd have to explain. So it's just like you'd have to retain so much energy and so much information in your head. And then normally after, rehearsals would finish quite late, and then I would go back home on the metro. So that's was kind of like a typical day.
Wow, that's quite a day.
Yeah, I mean, it was really, especially in the last year, I remember it was really, really long days, really hard, really intense, and a lot of extracurricular work outside of the theater and on days off. And I mean, I remember I didn't really have any days off, and I was, there's such pressure on you to maintain a certain aesthetic, that I was constantly doing some kind of workout, some kind of some kind of something to try to stay in shape.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I can imagine. It's interesting. I had never thought about like how you mentioned you do everyone almost everyone did privates as well, like on
Mhm.
top of the everything
Mhm.
else you were doing.
Yeah.
That's just so interesting. And yeah, wow, what a
Yeah.
schedule. So, speaking of aesthetics, as we know, ballet often emphasizes a very specific
Mhm.
aesthetic. During your training in Russia, did you ever feel pressure to push beyond your natural anatomy or physical structure in order to fit those expectations?
From day one, I remember I have a clear memory of me walking down the halls because the school is made in a square, and the girls sitting from oversplits from the radiator, and I'd like by the skin of my teeth just gotten my middle splits, like because in America we like at that time. Now it's changed with YGP. At that time it was like don't stretch, don't overstretch, and be careful, and and I just remember thinking like I have got to up my game, and I went through puberty quite young, and I was always a muscular girl, and I just remember my first year, everyone would say, "Oh, she's so strong, but oh, isn't it a shame she isn't thinner?" And I just had so much pressure, and I developed a severe eating disorder that, like, accompanied me through my most of my career. Like, most of my career, I was battling either anorexia or bulimia, and that started in the Bolshoi school. And, I mean, you have a weight chart of what you're supposed to weigh and what height, and they send that to you before you enter the school. And I remember I was supposed to be 45 kilograms for 168 centimeters, which is like 102 pounds for being 5'6". Yeah, it's something like really, really not okay. If you weighed 50 kilograms, you couldn't do pas de deux, which 50 kilograms for reference is 110 pounds. So, yeah, not most of the girls in my class didn't have their cycle. It was such a competition, especially the last 2 years of the school of like who can be the skinniest. And it was almost rewarded in a weird way, and until it got too bad, where we both, like, my friend and I, we lost too much weight, and then they were like, "Oh, they have to put weight on to go on stage. They're too skinny." So I'm not going to tell you that, oh, everyone was worried for my health. Absolutely not. And I mean, there's a hard truth to it. Ballet is an aesthetic art. You do need to fit into a certain aesthetic, but you need to be healthy. And now I wish I could go back with what I know at my age and just give that little pearl of wisdom to that little girl who was struggling so hard to fit in. And only if she would have just taken care of her body, I think I would have had less injuries, honestly.
My goodness, yes, thank you for sharing all of that. Yeah, speaking of injuries, I've heard you talk previously in some interviews about a major injury you had while you were a student there at the
Um,
Bolshoi. Do you mind talking a little bit about that and just in general how injuries were kind of handled in the school?
I mean, I unfortunately had a stress fracture going into the school year, which that was not wise. Like, my mother was a physician. She was like, "Can't you go in October or November when you're healed up?" And I was absolutely adamant that that wouldn't happen. And I don't think that I should have started the school year off with a stress fracture. And I had on my talus bone, basically what happened is eventually the bone broke, and a chip, like a chip of that bone broke off. So then I was kind of having this like impingement whenever I would go on releve, and I had to have a surgery to remove it in my first year at the school. And most people were like, "Okay, she's done. She's out." And I was so lucky that I came back from that surgery very quickly, all healed up, and everything went pretty smoothly. I was very lucky that I had a teacher who was very lenient, because I have seen at the school, and my teacher then changed to a different woman in year 2 and year 3. And I don't think that my teacher I finished with would have been as lenient as the teacher I had. I was very lucky. She was very supportive, very much, in a kind way, come back. I want you 100%. I don't want you 80%. And I mean, she was a prima ballerina with the Bolshoi, so I think she had a lot of compassion and a lot of empathy. Whereas the woman who was my teacher for the second and third year, she was an incredible teacher, but she didn't have that same empathy. She was very much like, you need to be at your best because I need to make the best choices of who I can present to the ballet company. And if you're injured all the time, I'm not gonna push you forward. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, injuries are just a part of being a dancer.
Mhm.
So I know we all have to deal with it at some point or another. But as a student, and a student in such an elite and intense school, I'm sure it was extremely challenging to
Mm.
navigate that so
My
young.
Yeah, my second year, actually, I had another stress fracture and couldn't do the exams. Like, and I thought I was done. And I was so lucky that I had a director of the school who was really supportive and gave me my marks for my state exam based on my work through the whole year. And I was very, very lucky because she could have kicked me out because I couldn't do the end of the school year exams because I had kind of destroyed my body. It's overtraining. It's classic overtraining, underfed, you know, pubescent woman. It's just really, and I mean, there were so many girls who had struggled with stress. I think I had a metatarsal stress fracture, like all of my metatarsals from the time I was 17 until like 23. It happened every year in March.
Oh gosh, yeah. Whew, that's tough.
Mhm.
Wow,
Yeah.
yeah. And again, as a student, to already have so many stress fractures, that just shows you
Yeah.
how intense the training was,
Mhm.
for
I
sure.
mean, I mean, we were basically it really prepared me well for company life, I do have to say, like, 'cause you had to handle a heavy load very early on. But it's a system that's meant to kind of weed out the ones who won't make it. You have to be really tough, not just in your body, but in your mind.
Absolutely. Wow. All right, let's see. Let's kind of switch gears a little bit. And given that you've trained in so many different systems of ballet training, you mentioned doing some American Balanchine training, the Russian Vaganova training, of course, and now you've been in France as well. From both a physical and technical standpoint, what differences have you noticed sort of in each style and how maybe with your body and your movement quality they might compare or contrast?
I love this question because I'm grateful for all of those different schools in my path. Uh, I love a Russian trained dancer with a French finish on it because the attention in the French style to beauty, to elegance, to clarity of movement, cleanliness of position, to the strength of the lower leg and the feet. I think that adds a level of refinement to like the Russian strength, technique, bravura, épaulement, and then of course the American training gives you almost a fearlessness and a deep love for dance. And that's something I love in Balanchine dancers. They just are so excited to go on stage and to perform. And they're not so concerned with, is my foot on the air? Is my leg high enough? That I think the Vaganova system is the most logical if you're going to teach it from grade 1 until grade 8. I think that the progression makes a lot of sense, and the lines that you produce from Vaganova training are really, really beautiful. Again, if you prepared your body in the right way for Vaganova training. So if you don't come from a rhythmic gymnastics or a floor bar intensive preparatory phase before you enter Vaganova training, I think you're setting yourself up for a lot of injuries. But if you do a mindful preparation stage of like 1 to 2 years of the child beforehand, you can have a beautiful result with that training. French training gives you a speed, and an ability to do quick petit allegro and really, really be able to execute, I think, almost a balancing like choreography in a very exciting way. I don't know if I've touched on all of the schools, but yeah.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And I love kind of thinking about like the similarities and differences and and you have so much experience with all three that I think it's just so interesting to hear you speak about that. So thank you. I guess I'd say I'm primarily Vaganova trained, but then like with a hint of some Balanchine. My teachers
Mhm.
kind of stuck with the Vaganova method, but they also had a little bit of Balanchine influence as well. So yeah, I'm a little bit of a mixture as well, I guess. Great. So also kind of comparing, contrasting the different systems. Did you notice any differences in how maybe corrections or coaching were delivered in the different training systems and how that might have affected like how you were able to learn or improve technically?
I have to say that I have a deep love affair for the Russian way. Yes, it can be strict, but it's deeply personal. It's very physical, and going from school into company, you are accompanied by one person who is your coach, who's responsible for your body, and you have a bond with that coach that goes deeper than just trying to help you perform the steps. So it's almost like having a psychologist and a ballet teacher in the same. And I think there's something really, really beautiful about the maturity in your dancing that comes with working with a person like that over the course of your career. And I am sad that we don't have something similar in the US. I do feel that coaches in the US tend to be a bit more positive, which that's always great. We need positive reinforcement. I don't respond well to criticism. There's been some women that I've been paired with in Russia where it was oil and water. Like that just didn't work for me. Like I can't do you're so lucky to be here, like don't be fat. Like I couldn't do that at a certain point. I was done with that. I do think that American coaches, this is a generality, this is not, tend to lack the language to be able to explain to their students how to fix technical problems. It tends to be, I think you should have you should have a different attitude about doing this step, or you should just feel it, or language that's not how can I give an example? Like, if you want to do a better piqué arabesque, you need to make sure that you're putting more emphasis on your plie before you do the piqué arabesque. Think about your left shoulder, your back muscles and your glutes and your pinky toe on the floor. Push and then rise up into your hip flexors. Those are the kind of corrections that I experienced in Russia really made the difference for me. And I remember one of my teachers I once was like, why? I was really interested in the why. Why isn't this working? And I find that sometimes in the American system, there is less of this going into why something isn't working. And but that's a generality. Everyone comes from a different place. The French is similar to the Russian system. They are fanatical about details. And they also have a very technical way of trying to get you to have the same technical results. Okay, yeah, French are great at technical coaching. The Russian are great at the role coaching for what you should feel. And then the American style is great for cheerleading. It's great for like giving you some confidence. And here being here in France for 4 years, I feel like the best company class I've ever taken was at the Paris Opera. The coaches that I would pay great amount of money to work with are these French coaches that can give you such a depth of knowledge and richness to your dancing that is really, really special.
That is also interesting. And what you said about giving corrections and like sort of the ability to achieve like improvement is so dependent on corrections in ballet. And
Mhm.
so that's really interesting what you said. Do you think that the Russian teachers might have more like anatomical knowledge in their than like I mean, again, we're speaking very generally here,
Mhm.
but just like for some of the corrections you were giving, like I have this background in exercise science and physiology and anatomy, and so like I feel like when I give corrections, I can say specific things like, "Oh, you," like I can look at it as like a physics problem and like
Mhm.
kind of analyze what's going on. Do you think that like that could potentially be a difference, like in some way?
I mean, for sure you have, you know, the furthering your education in Russia is not a maybe, it's just a question of when. Most dancers go on to do their teacher training. That's a 4-year university path. Then they do their master's, then they do their PhD. I mean, I have many, many, many colleagues who are the same age who have their PhD in teaching. So it's like a continuing science. And then each teacher has to come up with their own methodology within the Ganova system. So you go and you study other people's classes. It's almost like it's as if we're doing scientific research for medicine in some ways. You have to be writing literature, you have to be creating video documentation. It's not for fun, if you know what I mean. It's like for furthering the art, for furthering the methodology. They take it very, very seriously. So yes, I remember when I was in university, we had like psychology of children, psychology of young adults, psychology of the dancer who's right before her retirement, anatomy, all of these really, really in-depth lessons. I don't know if it's all because of that furthering education, but I do think that there's a deep tradition of not just passing like in France, for example, they're passing the tradition down orally. In Russia, they're passing the tradition down through learning and through writing things down.
So earlier you did mention sort of doing some strength training, cross training. I think you mentioned it in relation to being a student. But as you know, this type of training has become much more common in ballet in recent years, especially.
Mhm.
What was the attitude toward conditioning, recovery, and supplemental training, sort of both during, student time and also now as a
Mhm.
professional?
I think, you know, now it's been a long time since I was a student, but I was still in that age, where people were afraid of lifting weights, and Pilates was the only thing that you can do, which I love Pilates. Like, don't get me wrong, I love a reformer. But I remember the work that was being done in English National Ballet and Royal Ballet, and it was just really groundbreaking and really trying to embrace that as a young professional dancer. During school, I had found something called the Nike Training app and was doing workouts for athletes through that app, and that was something that I think gave me a competitive edge because nobody in my class was doing anything like that. No, like they had a lesson in school called gymnastics, and now the school has changed a lot. Svetlana Zaharova is the director of the school. They've made a lot of changes, and I think that times are advancing. I don't think that I don't think the school that I went to and the school that is happening now, I think they're two different places. But yeah, I just remember my teacher thinking, like, don't lift any weights. You'll get more bouquet than you already are. And now, I don't know, all through my career, I really embraced cross training, whether it's through strength training, gyrotonics, Pilates, cardio. They all serve different goals, but I think you cannot become a high level dancer without that now.
Yes, I agree. And I've done some other episodes about strength training and trying to debunk that myth about, getting bulky from
Yeah.
doing resistance training and weight training. So, yeah, I think it's just such a good and important complement to the ballet training you do in the studio.
Mhm.
And yeah, Pilates is another great one, of course, too, for core stability, all those things. So that's great. So, performing at an elite level comes with intense pressure, as we've talked about some already. Have you noticed any connection between stress and your physical performance or injury risk? Maybe, again, both
Mhm.
as a student and also now as a
Mhm.
professional.
I think as a student, I was in fight or flight. I think I was in fight or flight until I was 25. Like, let's be honest. I think that being a young adult, being a young adolescent, trying to figure out we put so much pressure on children to have it all figured out. I think now, yes, I make that connection. Am I stressed? Like, when I'm stressed, it equals injury. And then also, what kind of emotional stress am I under? What am I going through in my relationship, or what am I going through in my daily life? And, trying to be mindful of that. And when I'm not mindful or in denial, we end up with a twinge, or we. Now I'm in my 30s, and dancing in your 30s is a different beast than dancing in your 20s, and you have to just take so much more care. But it's the best. Dancing in your 30s, your 40s, I think it's the new dancing in your 20s now with all of the science that we have. But you just simply can't. You have to, like, before you can. My mom used to say it in a way of like, Joy, you kind of are burning the candle at both ends, and you can get away with that for so long until you can't. And the body really does keep score, and your mental, physical health they're so intertwined, and I think we need more education and more awareness inside of the ballet training, inside of the ballet syllabus, to teach dancers how to be in touch with how they're feeling and see the direct correlation on their performance as a result.
Absolutely. So, I guess kind of related to that, let's talk about dancer identity a little bit. So, as you know, ballet can become such a major part of a dancer's identity. As your career has evolved, has your relationship with ballet and your own identity and your body kind of changed over time?
Mm. I think this is a very actual question. I'm going through that now. I mean, there's so much of me that absolutely adores my time in the studio and on the stage, but I have this incredible life that I'm building for myself that's going to come for that inevitable moment where that's no longer possible, and it's stealing more of that time that I love in the studio. And I really yo-yo back and forth of like, do I want to be in a company again? Do I want to be more in a directorial role? And you know, I don't feel more connected to myself. I'll rephrase that. I feel more connected to myself after I've had a full class and done my 32 fuetes for the day and had a rehearsal than when I don't. And I think that there comes a death of identity for a dancer when she or he stops moving. I think we recode our hormonal system and our brain chemistry because we are so used to the endorphins released when we do physical movement, and this is a language that we have instilled in our bodies. um, but there's been times when I have injuries or things in life, in your personal life, tear you away from that, and you have to find out who you are, why you are, what you are, what makes you I and all of that makes you a richer dancer. But I think if there's anyone listening that's a younger dancer, it's like keep your eyes on your life that is long, and dance. You can hold dance by the hand, but don't let dance take over your life and define who you are, because being good is so subjective. So if you're only good because somebody says that you're good, you're going to have a problem if dance is no longer part of the story.
Yes, that was lovely what you just said. And yeah, I think I love talking about sort of the transition that we have to all, as dancers, we have to all go through at some point. Like there will become a day where, you're not going to be on the stage anymore. And then like what's next? How can we still stay connected to dance if we want to be, but kind of find a path forward that is just as
Mm.
fulfilling and, gives us the same feelings or something comparable at least. And it's so difficult. It's such a hard time. And yeah, I just loved everything that you said just there. So thank you so much for all that. Now that you're freelancing, can you talk a little bit about, like, I guess your schedule, or I'm sure it changes a
Mm.
lot. I did a little bit of freelance work many years ago. And so it was just kind of, mix and match at times. But as a freelance dancer now, what kind of training do you do
Mm.
to stay
Yeah.
in shape and stuff like that?
I mean, I'm so privileged, first of all, to be able to be a freelancer. It really isn't for everyone. And I'm very grateful that I live in France. France is very supportive of freelance dancers. There's a fund that you pay into with each job that you get that then pays you a salary when you're not working. So you have some kind of set income that comes in. So very grateful for that. And also you have a healthcare system where I mean, you pay into that also with each job. So you have many things are covered by the Social Security. So I almost have created a company for myself without having a company. I have physio twice a week. I have gyrotonics once a week. This space, as you can see, is my home office, but it also is. I have a bike here. I have everything that you need to do for every every gadget that you can imagine for cross training. And I do strength Pilates multiple times a week, and then I have ballet class every day from 11:30 to 1:30, and then whatever, like right now I'm rehearsing for a show that's coming up, and I'll rehearse for an hour after class, or I'll book a studio somewhere to do rehearsals for that. I'll have my partners come in, for example, this weekend, and we'll rehearse on Saturday and Sunday. And then I do a lot of travel, so I'm very much on the go. This summer I'll be in many different countries, and now I'm doing a lot more teaching, so that's really great. I love that. But in summary, the first half of the day, I'm doing my own training and my own physio. And the second half of the day, I'm teaching. or working on my computer for scheduling our next show with our company, or sending money to a student. So I'm doing a lot of the administrative and then a lot of the dancing, but it really is a full-time job. I mean, if I want to, I can work from 8 a.m. until 11 p.m. and but yeah, it's really fulfilling. I think when I do fantasize about going into a company, I am so much of my own boss and have been for many years that I think it would be really hard to go back to having someone else be be my boss. And I have an entrepreneurial spirit, so I've developed a course for younger dancers who want a structured syllabus, so levels 1, 2, and 3, and then a pre-ballet program as well, and then this program that I called rhythmic gymnastics for dancers, and this is the preparatory program that we were talking about before. So I have to do a lot of a lot of management of that as well. And yeah, that's and then find some time to say hi to my husband and walk my dog and see some friends.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Mm.
And yeah, it makes sense that kind of after doing your own thing and obviously very successfully doing your own thing, it might be difficult to kind of go back to company
Mm.
life.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
I think next year, this is my hope, and things do take time to, but I'm hoping that my performances will be more with the company that I'm building here in Paris, and that will look kind of more like a set routine, because travel really is a different beast, and that is really hard on the body and the mind. But yeah, I hear you.
I think good. So this is kind of a good segue into my next question. And you kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier, talking about the rhythmic gymnastics training that you would
Mm.
suggest. But if you could sort of go back in time and redesign your own training from the beginning, knowing everything you know
Mm.
now, what
Mhm.
would you do differently, kind of just in any respect to the training that you had now
Mm.
with all your new knowledge, even as a teacher, things maybe you've learned?
Mhm. I think that if I could, I would tell my mom to put me in rhythmic gymnastics or artistic gymnastics from like ages, I think 3 to 5, you can do some creative movement. And I think that's very nice. But I would do rhythmic gymnastics from 5 to 8 years old, and then folk dances, or kind of this like some kind of lyrical something where you get the passion for dance without having to have the rigor of a daily training, from ages 8 until 9, and then go start with the Vaganova syllabus ages 10 and go through that, but then add after the third level of Vaganova, add some Balanchine no add some French repertoire with character. By Bogdanova syllabus, I mean like the richness of the historical dance, the character dance, the being able to do repertory pieces of great ballets. I think that's really important to do group dance as a young age, because it teaches you spatial awareness and it teaches you how to work in a group. I think that yes, YGP is great, but we're making a bunch of soloists. We're not making a bunch of dancers that are going to be working in a company. And I think you need to know how to work in a group and have a group dynamic. And then when the dancer goes on point and then starts to think about a pre-professional path, I would add in I think through this whole thing we should have some conditioning, Pilates, some kind of reinforcement that's happening to strengthen all of the joints, to strengthen the back chain. And then puberty hits, and then I would start putting in a little bit more of resistance training, gyrotonics. Um, I think that you can do reformer Pilates with younger dancers, and it helps them actually find their center. I did reformer Pilates, and I think that was one of the things that was most beneficial because I had hyperextension and I was super super mobile as a young child. And then ages 13 to 18 start to do variations coaching, start to go to competitions, start to ramp up the intensity of the training while fueling yourself and taking care of your strength, taking care of your sleep and your nutrition. I think if I had just had more protein and more sleep, I wouldn't. My joints are a mess nowadays because I didn't take care of my nutrition. I think nutrition is the most important thing you can do when you're a young kid. But yeah, I think it's so important how you started off. The first 3 years of your schooling are, very, very important, and there's so much of your ballet training that goes into undoing bad habits if you don't have a good teacher and a good foundation. So that rhythmic gymnastics, why rhythmic gymnastics? I mean, I'm not saying let's break the back and let's do hyperextended knees, but you need to have flexibility, you need to have coordination, and that's with catching the elements. You need to have musicality, and those things come with that rhythmic gymnastic training. And it also gives the child a sense of discipline, a sense of belonging, and you have to teach a young child that you sacrifice in the present to have a reward in the long time. And I think that gymnastics training does a really good job of that.
Wonderful. I love all of that. And it's also interesting putting all that together and thinking about sort of the effects of all the different pieces, to create
Mhm.
the dancer at the end. I think that's wonderful. And I absolutely agree that, the competitions are so big these days, the ballet competitions, especially in America, but even internationally, I would say.
Mhm.
And what you said about, dancing as a group is a skill that is just, especially if you plan on being in a ballet company, like, what do you think
Mhm.
you're going to be doing when you start off in the corps? You're going to
Mhm.
be dancing in a group. And like you
Yeah.
said, if you go in thinking like I'm going to be doing solos, like I've been working on, for YGP or whatever
Mhm.
competition, I've actually known of several students who've really struggled to kind of transition into company life after
Mhm.
focusing so much on
Yeah.
variations and all
I
that
don't
because it's so different.
I don't think that we're talking enough about the mental health crisis of a dancer that goes from school into a company. And I do believe it's one of the hardest things that we face in this career. I mean, obviously, the retirement, I think that's even bigger, or a mother coming back to dance after she's given birth is something I don't know because I've never experienced it, but I've watched my colleagues and that's very challenging. But uh, you we have created like, we invest so much money into these phenomenal, incredible talents. Like, you watch some of these girls and boys, and you're just like, wow, what a talent. But we're not stewarding their mind. And we see it. They quit when it gets too hard, or, it's very challenging for them to adapt into a company. And, when you don't have the training of character, or, you don't have any you're not I don't wanna I hate to use the word robot, but you can execute something that you've been coached in very, very well, but gleaning information, being able to bring your own artistry, that comes from having substance, that comes from having exposure to these different forms of dance that only enrich your experience. And, that's why one of the girls that I'm watching right now is Crystal Huang, who she's incredible. She did great in Pre-Leza. But she did so many different styles of dance, and, yes, obviously she's phenomenal, but you just see that she's such a rich performer because she has all of those different styles inside of her, and it's amazing to see a ballet dancer that's so versatile. Um, but then, you wonder, it's like, how many hours has that dancer been, training to do so well in those competitions? Like, will they be fulfilled in a ballet company, especially a company that's like San Francisco Ballet, where they have just 6 months of performances out of the year? Like, I don't know, and I wonder if we aren't if there isn't something that we're missing inside of the training at this time that would promote a readiness for that.
That's an excellent point. And yes, it's just such an important transition period. And yeah, I agree basically with
I
everything
can't
you said.
I can't wait to see some of these girls, and I really hope that they do make it to principal, to soloist. I can't wait to see that. I want them to be full human being in that experience. And really, I wish I could protect them from the anguish that it is. It's really hard to sit on the sidelines and watch somebody less talented than you uh, dance, and you have to stand. But that's this is the and some would say, oh well, if the person's more talented, they should have the opportunity. But there's a natural progression to life, and there's things that you can learn. Like, I'm so grateful for my time of being in the corps ballet of the Paris Opera. I loved it. I learned so much. And it was a great experience. And, I don't think that we should change. There's nothing wrong with being a corps ballet dancer. And I think if you want to be a choreographer, if you want to be a director, if you want to be a teacher, you need to understand every single role that's inside. If you want to love the art form, you need to embrace every single facet of it. And I don't think that I don't hmm. We're not demonizing being in the corps de ballet, but we're not celebrating it. And I wonder if, for example, if you had in YGP or in other competitions, if you were really promoting a really well rehearsed group piece, if that wouldn't help, if that wouldn't make it something that's more attractive. If you really know how to stand in line and if you really know how to be all together, I think that's such an incredible talent. And then you can bring that to your solos, you can bring that to your pas de deux because you know how to work in a group. But anyway, food for thought.
Yes, that is all so true and so many good ideas in there. Yeah, I love all that. So, despite all of the physical demands and pressures of ballet that you've experienced over the years, both as a student and now a professional, what has continued to make you love dancing that has kind of carried
Mm.
you throughout your career?
That's it's such a hard question to answer in an articulate way, but I'll try. I mean, I think even the simplest things are so precious to me. The ritual of waking up and warming up, putting your hand on the bar, like when those first notes of the music start of the class, there's just something where time stops and you're almost transported to this other dimension of uh, this space where it's just you and your body and the music and also the people that are in the room and the person who's in the front of the room. But it's almost spiritual in a way to me. Uh, Now, because I'm dancing less, I really, really, really treasure it. It's really a gift. Even on the hard days, even when I'm in pain, I really enjoy the process. And of course, I love going on stage, and that's beautiful. But I think to me, the process is so sacred and is so enjoyable. It's so self indulgent. And this constant pursuit for not perfection, but a better understanding of who you are in the space, in your body, and how can you transmit the music in a way that touches the person that you're seeing, and how can you almost worship beauty in a way that you make the person who's watching you experience that. I think that uh, that's what ballet is to me. It's the ultimate expression of love for oneself and also for those who are watching, and it's a celebration of the fact that we are deeply human and um, we are in the present and we cannot go forward and we can't go back. And it's fleeting. One day you're doing great, and the next day you're dealing with an injury. It's so unpredictable, but it is so beautiful.
Oh, that was absolutely beautiful what you just said. So, thank you so much for all of that. And yes, I would agree that, ballet and even just dance, it does require you to be so present in the moment. I mean, like if especially, a live performance, like that's happening in real time and, to
Mhm,
really be aware of like how am I feeling in this present moment and then like how am I making the audience feel in this present moment?
mhm.
Like it can be such a special, unique thing. And so I love
Um,
that you spoke about that some, and I think that's so important to, the arts and just, being a human is
mhm,
finding like a way to be present as much
mhm,
as possible because we get so focused on well, what's happening next, what's happening tomorrow, what's happening
mhm,
next year, or what happened yesterday, or
mhm.
staying too much on the past. And yeah, so I love everything you said there. Thank you so much. All right. Well, I think just to finish up, if you could give young, aspiring ballet dancers one piece of advice, what would you tell them?
Be kind to yourself, but if this is something that you love, fight for that and get up every single time that you feel defeated. Don't give up. And enjoy the present moment.
Wonderful advice for sure.
Mm.
Excellent. All right. Well, Joy, I feel like I could talk to you all day. This has been
I
such an amazing conversation.
It was such an honor to get to speak to you, and I can't wait to listen to more episodes of Ballet Science. And I have such a deep appreciation for what you do and for what you're sharing with your listeners. And I'll be for sure following you on all things social and watching out for your content.
Well, thank you so much. That means a lot coming from you. And you mentioned you have a nonprofit and your company. If
Mhm.
listeners want to learn more about that, can you direct them to a
Yes.
website or anything like that?
You can go to joywomack.com, and we have everything that we're doing from the company to our in-person classes here in Paris, to our nonprofit fund. If you'd like to give to that, you will be making a difference in select dancers' careers. So you can find all of that information at joywomack.com. Otherwise, you can find me on Instagram, on TikTok, and on YouTube.
Excellent. I will make sure and put links to all of that in the description so people can find that easily.
Mm,
Well,
okay.
great. Well, Joy, thank you again. This has
So
truly been
much.
an honor and a wonderful discussion.
Thank you so much.